Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy History Channel. Tonight, we'll journey back to one of the most remarkable civilizations the world has ever known. Ancient India was a land of mighty empires and wise philosophers. Towering temples carved from stone and cities so carefully planned they still astonish us today. Here, mathematics and astronomy flourished. Doctors performed surgeries, poets composed epics longer than any others in history, and mystics explored the nature of the self and the universe. There were emperors and merchants, scholars and storytellers, and ordinary people whose lives left quiet traces in pottery, jewelry, and inscriptions. India gave us the concept of zero, philosophies that continue to guide millions, and traditions of art, music, and learning that shape not only Asia, but the entire world. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like and subscribe, or simply leave a thought in the comments below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is relax, settle in, and allow your thoughts to drift gently into the past. Let's begin. Their cities had flushing toilets thousands of years before anyone else. Long before Rome built its aqueducts, the people of the Indus Valley were already living with remarkable comforts. In cities like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, many houses contained private bathrooms with early versions of flushing toilets. These weren't simple pits in the ground. They were connected to covered drains that carried waste away from the home and out of the city. Archaeologists have found brick-lined channels and soak pits, showing a deliberate design to keep living areas clean and sanitary. This level of planning suggests that public health and hygiene were taken seriously thousands of years ago, around 2600 BCE. What makes it even more astonishing is how widespread it was. These weren't just luxuries for the elite. Even ordinary homes had access to this technology. Imagine walking into a modest house 4,000 years ago and finding a small bathroom with a flushing system. It feels almost modern. The world's first planned cities emerged in ancient India. When you picture a city from 4,000 years ago, you might imagine a maze of huts and winding dirt paths. But in the Indus Valley, cities were carefully designed with precision and foresight. Streets ran in straight lines, often meeting at perfect right angles. The layout was grid-like, more advanced than many modern cities. Residential areas were separated from public spaces, and buildings were often made of standardized baked bricks. Some homes even had multiple stories, with staircases and private courtyards. What's more, the cities were planned with water management in mind. Wells were dug to supply fresh water, and drainage channels carried wastewater out of neighborhoods. This was not the result of random growth, but of careful, intentional city planning. The people of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro created urban environments so advanced that archaeologists still marvel at their sophistication, calling them some of the very first planned cities in human history. A script we still cannot fully read was left behind by the Indus people. The Indus Valley Civilization left behind thousands of small seals, tablets, and inscriptions carved with mysterious symbols. Despite decades of study, no one has been able to fully decipher this script. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs, which were unlocked with the Rosetta Stone, the Indus script has no known bilingual text to guide translation. The symbols appear on pottery, jewelry, tools, and trade seals, often accompanied by images of animals like bulls, elephants, and mythical creatures. Scholars debate whether these marks represent a language, an accounting system, or even a combination of both. The longest inscription discovered is only about 26 characters long, leaving little context to work with. What's fascinating is that this undeciphered writing belongs to one of the most advanced civilizations of its time. The people who planned cities, engineered drains, and organized long-distance trade also wrote, but their words remained silent, a mystery waiting to be solved. Ancient Indian engineers built cities with sophisticated drainage systems. If there is one feature that shows the genius of the Indus Valley people, it is their drainage. While many ancient societies let waste flow openly in the streets, Harappa and Mohenjo-daro built elaborate systems to carry it away. Covered drains ran beneath the main roads built from baked bricks fitted tightly together. Smaller drains connected individual homes and baths to these larger channels. Some had inspection holes covered with stone slabs, allowing for maintenance, a detail that would impress modern engineers. The entire system was designed with gradients, ensuring waste and rainwater flowed naturally downhill. This wasn't a single city achievement. Multiple Indus settlements reveal the same advanced drainage. To imagine this, thousands of years ago, ordinary citizens had access to clean, flowing water and sanitation systems superior to those in many parts of the world until the 19th century. It shows that urban comfort and public health were deeply valued. The Great Bath of Mohenjo-daro was one of the oldest public water tanks. In the heart of Mohenjo-daro lies a structure that has puzzled and fascinated archaeologists for nearly a century: the Great Bath. Measuring about 12 meters long and 7 meters wide and merely 3 meters deep, this massive brick-lined tank was carefully sealed with bitumen to make it watertight. Wide steps led down into the pool from both ends, while small rooms surrounded it, possibly for changing or ritual preparation. Scholars believe the Great Bath was more than just a public swimming pool. It may have been a sacred space used for purification rituals. Water has long held spiritual importance in Indian traditions, and this early monument suggests that ritual bathing has been part of the culture for thousands of years. What's truly astonishing is the engineering. The bath had its own drainage system and a nearby well to supply fresh water, making it one of the oldest known public waterworks. Ancient Indian weights and measures were strikingly precise. Trade thrived in the Indus Valley, and with it came the need for fairness and precision. Archaeologists have unearthed sets of weights carved from chert stone, shaped into cubes of different sizes. These weights were carefully standardized, following a binary system, with each unit doubling the one below it. This system allowed merchants to measure goods with accuracy, whether trading beads, grain, or precious metals. Remarkably, many weights discovered across different Indus cities are nearly identical, showing a central authority or cultural standard was in place. Alongside these, rulers and measuring scales made from ivory or shell have also been found. It's incredible to think that 4,000 years ago, traders in the Indus Valley worked with measures as reliable as those used in modern marketplaces. Their precision suggests not only technical skill, but also a highly organized economy that depended on trust and uniformity in commerce. The people of the Indus Valley wore colorful cotton clothes. One of the world's earliest uses of cotton began in ancient India. Archaeologists have found cotton fibers, spindle whorls, and even fragments of woven textiles at Indus Valley sites. Unlike animal-based fabrics such as wool, cotton offered a light, breathable material perfect for the hot climate. The Indus people dyed their clothing with bright colors extracted from natural plants and minerals. Red, blue, and green hues have been identified through traces of ancient pigments. Figurines from the era show men wearing simple robes or waistcloths, while women adorned themselves in patterned garments and elaborate headpieces. The presence of spindle whorls in household excavations suggests that weaving and spinning were widespread domestic activities. Cotton textiles from India became so admired that, centuries later, they spread across the ancient world, shaping global trade. But it all began here, with ordinary families dyeing and weaving vibrant fabrics in the bustling cities of the Indus. India was among the first places to domesticate elephants. For thousands of years, elephants have been symbols of strength and wisdom in Indian culture, and the connection goes back to the earliest times. The Indus Valley Civilization shows evidence of elephant domestication, as seals depict the animals alongside humans in controlled settings. Unlike horses or cattle, taming elephants required immense patience, intelligence, and bravery. These powerful creatures were used for heavy labor, transporting goods, and later in warfare, where they became towering forces on the battlefield. Ancient texts also describe their importance in ritual and ceremony. The skill of Indian mahouts, elephant trainers, was passed down through generations, turning wild giants into trusted companions. The domestication of elephants in India predates many other parts of the world, making it one of the first places where humans and these magnificent animals forged a partnership. It's a bond that continues to echo in India's culture even today. Dice games were played in India more than 4,000 years ago. Leisure and play were as much a part of ancient life as they are today. In the Indus Valley, archaeologists have discovered small cubical dice made of terracotta, stone, and ivory. These dice are remarkably similar to those we use today, complete with dots marking each side. Some are perfectly balanced, showing careful craftsmanship. The presence of dice in multiple Indus sites suggests that games of chance were a popular pastime, possibly played both for fun and for stakes. Later, Indian texts, like the Mahabharata, describe dice games with high drama. Even great kings gambled their fortunes and honor on the throw of the dice. It's fascinating to imagine that 4,000 years ago, families and friends may have sat together on stone courtyards, laughing and playing games nearly identical to the ones we still play today. The thrill of chance is truly timeless. Ancient Indian jewelry was so advanced it could rival modern designs. The people of the Indus Valley loved adornment, and their craftsmanship reached extraordinary levels. Archaeologists have found intricate necklaces made of gold, silver, carnelian, lapis lazuli, and faience beads. Earrings, bangles, and anklets were common, worn by both men and women. What's astonishing is the sophistication of the techniques, drilling tiny holes through hard gemstones, polishing beads to a mirror finish, and stringing them into elaborate patterns. Workshops for bead making have been uncovered, showing that jewelry making was a thriving industry. Some pieces even used imported materials, proof of long-distance trade connections. The artistry reflects not just wealth, but also cultural expression. Jewelry may have marked social status, identity, or even spiritual beliefs. To hold one of these pieces today is to see a design that could easily fit in a modern shop window, yet it was crafted by skilled artisans more than 4,000 years ago. The Vedas are some of the oldest religious texts still known today. The Vedas are among humanity's most ancient surviving writings. Composed in Sanskrit and preserved through careful oral tradition before being written down, they date back as far as 1500 BCE. The word Veda means knowledge, and these texts contain hymns, chants, rituals, and philosophical reflections. They were not simply religious scriptures, but also encyclopedias of early Indian culture, including astronomy, medicine, and poetry. What makes them astonishing is their endurance. For thousands of years, priests memorized every word, passing them down with exacting precision. Even today, many Vedic hymns are still recited in temples and ceremonies across India. They shaped not only Hinduism, but also broader Indian thought and culture, influencing music, literature, and philosophy for millennia. To hear the sound of a Vedic chant today is to connect with voices echoing from the dawn of civilization, carrying wisdom that has traveled unbroken across 3,000 years of history. ancient India imagined the universe as cycles of creation and destruction. While many ancient cultures saw time as linear, with a clear beginning and end, ancient Indian philosophy envisioned the cosmos as cyclical. According to the Puranas and other texts, the universe undergoes endless cycles of creation, preservation, and dissolution, each spanning billions of years. These cycles are called kalpas, unimaginably vast stretches of time. The idea was both poetic and scientific, recognizing that existence is not static, but constantly renewing. This vision of time anticipates concepts in modern cosmology, where theories like the oscillating universe mirror similar ideas. What's remarkable is that these cycles were not only mythological, but also influenced daily life. Festivals, rituals, and even calendars reflected the belief that everything has a rhythm: day and night, the seasons, human lifespans, and the rise and fall of civilizations. To the ancient Indian mind, the universe was a grand wheel, eternally turning without beginning or end. The concept of zero was born in India. The number zero seems so obvious to us today, but it was one of humanity's most revolutionary inventions, and it was born in India. Ancient Indian mathematicians recognized the need for a symbol to represent nothingness, which transformed mathematics forever. The oldest known inscription of zero as a numeral was found in India on a 9th century stone tablet, though the idea itself is much older, appearing in early mathematical texts. Zero was not just a placeholder. It made calculations simpler, opened the door to algebra, and eventually became the foundation for modern computing. Without it, there would be no binary code, no digital age. Ancient Indian scholars saw zero as both a mathematical necessity and a philosophical idea, tied to concepts of emptiness and infinity. The invention of zero is one of the most profound contributions ever made, and it emerged from the fertile minds of India's thinkers. Ancient Indian mathematicians calculated the length of the year with astonishing accuracy. Long before telescopes or satellites, Indian astronomers carefully observed the skies, recording the movement of stars and planets. In texts like the Surya Siddhanta, composed more than 1500 years ago, they calculated the length of a solar year with striking precision. Their measurement of 365 days, 6 hours, 12 minutes, and 30 seconds differs from modern calculations by only a few seconds. This achievement required not only keen observation, but also advanced mathematical methods, including trigonometry. What's fascinating is how they integrated science with spirituality. Astronomy was not separate from religion. Tracking celestial cycles helped determine rituals, festivals, and agricultural seasons. This blending of practical knowledge with cosmic wonder produced a system that could rival even Greek and Babylonian astronomy. When you think of ancient Indian scholars, imagine them under starlit skies, measuring the heavens with such care that their calculations still impress scientists today. Sanskrit is one of the oldest languages still studied today. Sanskrit is often called the mother of languages, and for good reason. Emerging thousands of years ago, it remains one of the most sophisticated and refined languages ever developed. Unlike many tongues that evolved organically, Sanskrit was consciously structured, with grammar codified in astonishing detail by the ancient linguist Panini. His work, written around the 4th century BCE, contains nearly 4,000 rules of grammar so systematic that some modern linguists compare it to computer coding. Sanskrit became the language of philosophy, science, and epic literature, carrying the Vedas, Upanishads, and great poems like the Mahabharata and Ramayana. Its influence spread across Asia, shaping languages in Nepal, Tibet, Southeast Asia, and beyond. Even today, Sanskrit words appear in modern languages, and its study continues to fascinate scholars worldwide. To read Sanskrit is to step into a linguistic treasure chest, filled with sounds and ideas that shaped civilizations. The Upanishads explored consciousness centuries before modern philosophy. Long before Descartes or modern psychology, the sages of ancient India were asking profound questions. What is the self? What is the nature of reality? These questions are explored in the Upanishads, a collection of philosophical texts written around the first millennium BCE. They introduce concepts like Atman, the true self, and Brahman, the ultimate reality that pervades everything. The Upanishads suggest that the self is not separate from the universe, but intimately connected to it, an idea that resonates with both spiritual seekers and modern physicists contemplating unity in nature. Their poetic style uses metaphors, such as rivers merging into the ocean, to explain complex truths. What is remarkable is how these early texts examined consciousness, not through instruments, but through introspection and meditation. The Upanishads continue to inspire philosophers and spiritual traditions worldwide, offering insights into existence that remain strikingly relevant today. The epic of the Mahabharata is longer than the Iliad and Odyssey combined. The Mahabharata is not just a story, it is the longest epic poem ever written, containing over 100,000 verses. To put that in perspective, it is nearly 10 times the length of the Iliad and Odyssey combined. At its heart is the tale of a dynastic struggle between two branches of a royal family, culminating in the great battle of Kurukshetra. But the Mahabharata is more than war. It weaves together philosophy, morality, love, politics, and devotion. Within its verses lies the Bhagavad Gita, a timeless dialogue on duty and the nature of life. The scale of the Mahabharata reflects the vastness of Indian culture itself, epic in scope, deeply human in detail. For thousands of years it has been recited, sung, and performed, influencing literature, theatre, and even cinema. To enter the Mahabharata is to step into a universe of wisdom and story. The Ramayana spread across Asia, inspiring countless cultures. The Ramayana tells the story of Prince Rama, his loyal wife Sita, and his devoted companion Hanuman, who battled the demon king Ravana to restore justice. Written by the sage Valmiki, the poem is shorter than the Mahabharata, but no less influential. What makes it extraordinary is how far it traveled. Across centuries, the Ramayana spread beyond India's borders into Southeast Asia, where it became a cultural foundation. In Thailand, Indonesia, Cambodia, and Laos, the story was retold in new forms: shadow puppetry, temple carvings, and courtly drama. Even today, you can see Ramayana scenes on temple walls in Angkor Wat, or hear the story sung in Bali. Its themes of love, loyalty, and the triumph of good over evil gave it universal appeal. Few works of literature have shaped so many nations' identities. The Ramayana is more than a story. It is a shared cultural treasure across Asia. Ancient Indian grammar was so precise, it resembles modern coding. Around the 4th century BCE, the scholar Panini wrote the Ashtadhyayi, a Sanskrit grammar that remains one of the most sophisticated linguistic systems ever created. This text, containing nearly 4,000 concise rules, describes Sanskrit with such precision that modern linguists and computer scientists have compared it to programming languages. Panini's rules function like algorithms, generating words and sentences systematically. What's astonishing is the efficiency. His system can generate an infinite variety of expressions from a finite set of rules, much like modern computer code. In fact, Panini's grammar is sometimes called the world's first formal language, a concept at the heart of artificial intelligence and machine learning today. To think that over 2,000 years ago, an Indian scholar devised a system so exact that it still influences modern computing is mind-blowing. Panini's genius shows how deeply language and logic were intertwined in ancient India. Indian astronomers knew the Earth spins on its axis. In the 5th century CE, the mathematician-astronomer Aryabhata proposed something extraordinary. The Earth rotates on its axis. At a time when many cultures believed the heavens revolved around a stationary Earth, Aryabhata argued the opposite. He explained that the apparent daily movement of the stars is actually caused by Earth's rotation. His insights were recorded in the Aryabhatiya, a remarkable text covering astronomy, mathematics, and trigonometry. Aryabhata also calculated the Earth's circumference with surprising accuracy and developed methods to predict eclipses. His vision was revolutionary, centuries ahead of its time. These ideas influenced later Indian and Islamic astronomy, eventually echoing into Europe. Imagine gazing at the night sky in ancient India and daring to suggest that it is not the heavens moving, but us, spinning through space. Aryabhata's bold thinking shows how advanced Indian science was, reaching insights that would not be widely accepted for centuries. Ayurveda has roots stretching back thousands of years. Ayurveda, meaning the science of life, is one of the world's oldest medical systems, with origins tracing back more than 3,000 years. Its holistic approach emphasized balance between body, mind, and spirit. Ancient texts like the Charaka Samhita describe detailed theories of health, disease, and treatment, covering everything from diet and lifestyle to herbal remedies and surgery. Ayurveda identified 3 doshas, or bodily energies, and treatments were personalized to restore harmony. What's remarkable is how comprehensive it was. Ayurveda offered preventive care, surgery, pharmacology, and even psychiatry. Many of its principles, such as the benefits of meditation, yoga, and herbal medicine, are being rediscovered in modern wellness practices today. While not every ancient treatment was effective by modern standards, Ayurveda reflects a profound understanding of health as a dynamic balance. It shows how deeply the people of ancient India cared for life in all its dimensions. Ancient surgeons performed complex operations like rhinoplasty. Centuries before modern plastic surgery, Indian surgeons were performing advanced operations. The Sushruta Sanhita, an ancient surgical text, describes procedures including cataract removal, cesarean sections, and even rhinoplasty, reconstructive surgery of the nose. In fact, India is often credited with inventing rhinoplasty. Surgeons would use skin grafts, carefully cutting and reshaping tissue to rebuild damaged noses, often injured in war or ritual punishment. This method, known as the Indian flap, was so effective that European surgeons borrowed the technique centuries later. The text also describes the use of scalpels, forceps, and probes, along with careful sterilization techniques like boiling instruments. Patients were given herbal anesthesia and treated with antiseptic herbs afterward. It's astonishing to realize that over 2,000 years ago, Indian doctors were performing surgeries with methods that feel strikingly modern, proving that ancient medicine was far more advanced than we often imagine. Sushruta's surgical texts were used for centuries across the world. The name Sushruta stands out as one of the greatest surgeons in history. His compendium, the Sushruta Samhita, is considered a foundational text of surgery. Written in Sanskrit around the 6th century BCE, it described more than 300 surgical procedures and 120 surgical instruments. The text included instructions for everything from sutures and amputations to complex abdominal operations. It also emphasized training, requiring students to practice on fruits, vegetables, and animal parts before operating on patients. What's remarkable is that Sushruta's work spread far beyond India. Translations into Arabic during the medieval period carried his knowledge to the Islamic world, where it influenced medical practice for centuries. Later, echoes of his work reached Europe. Sushruta's text represents a bridge across civilizations, showing how Indian medical knowledge became part of the shared heritage of global medicine. His legacy proves that science transcends borders and generations. Ancient Indian doctors understood the circulatory system. Long before William Harvey described blood circulation in the 17th century, Indian medical texts had already hinted at it. The Sushruta Samhita and Charaka Samhita both describe channels, or srotas, through which fluids and blood move throughout the body. They recognized the heart as a central organ pumping life force, with vessels branching out to nourish the body. While not identical to modern anatomy, these observations were astonishingly close to the truth. Doctors of ancient India used this knowledge to diagnose imbalances and treat illnesses, often prescribing dietary changes, herbal medicines, and even surgical interventions. Their insights were based on both dissection and careful observation of living patients. Considering the limited tools available, the accuracy of their understanding is remarkable. It reveals how deeply they studied the human body, combining empirical observation with holistic philosophy to grasp the intricate flow of life within us. Yoga practices began long before recorded history. Today, yoga is practiced worldwide for fitness and relaxation, but its roots are ancient, stretching back thousands of years. Archaeologists have found Indus Valley seals depicting figures in postures resembling yogic meditation, suggesting that the practice predates written history. In Vedic and later Upanishadic texts, yoga was described not as exercise but as a spiritual discipline, a path to unite body, mind, and spirit. Breathing techniques, meditation, and physical postures were all seen as ways to achieve harmony and self-realization. Yoga became one of the 6 classical schools of Indian philosophy, influencing Buddhism and Jainism as well. Its continuity is extraordinary. What began as a sacred practice in ancient India now fills studios and homes around the globe. While its meaning has evolved, the essence remains the same, a timeless pursuit of balance and inner peace, rooted in one of the world's oldest traditions. Meditation techniques were refined in India centuries ago. The practice of meditation, now embraced worldwide, has deep roots in ancient India. As early as the Vedic period, sages sat in silence, focusing their minds to connect with deeper truths. The Upanishads describe meditative practices aimed at realizing the self and understanding the universe. By the time of the Buddha in the 5th century BCE, meditation had become central to spiritual life, with techniques refined to cultivate mindfulness, concentration, and compassion. Jain traditions also developed unique methods of contemplation. These practices were not limited to monks' householders too, engaged in meditation as a way to maintain balance in daily life. What's striking is how modern science now validates many of these ancient insights, showing benefits for mental health, focus, and emotional resilience. To meditate today is to participate in a tradition stretching back thousands of years, one that has guided generations toward clarity and peace. Ancient Indian theories of atoms preceded Greek philosophy. Long before Democritus proposed atoms in Greece, Indian philosophers were already discussing the idea of indivisible particles. Around the 6th century BCE, thinkers of the Vaisheshika school described Anu, tiny, indestructible units that make up all matter. These atoms, they said, combined in various ways to form everything in the universe. Even more astonishing, they debated how atoms could possess different qualities, like heaviness, texture, or color, depending on their arrangements. The theory was not just abstract, it was part of the larger philosophical system explaining the nature of reality. While they lacked microscopes or modern physics, these ancient Indian philosophers grasped an idea that resonates with today's atomic theory. The notion that matter is composed of unseen fundamental building blocks reveals the extraordinary depth of Indian thought, reaching scientific insight centuries before many other civilizations imagined them. Nalanda University drew students from across Asia. Founded in the 5th century CE, Nalanda University was one of the world's first great centers of higher learning. Located in Bihar, it attracted scholars and students from as far as China, Korea, Tibet, and Central Asia. At its height, Nalanda housed thousands of students and teachers, offering studies in subjects ranging from philosophy and medicine to mathematics, astronomy, and linguistics. The campus included monasteries, temples, lecture halls, and vast libraries, some said to contain hundreds of thousands of manuscripts. Pilgrims like the Chinese monk Xuanzang wrote admiring accounts of its rigorous teaching and lively debates. Nalanda represented the global reputation of Indian scholarship, a beacon of learning centuries before Europe's medieval universities. Tragically, the university was destroyed in the 12th century, and much of its vast knowledge was lost. Yet Nalanda's legacy remains, symbolizing India's role as a cradle of higher education and intellectual exchange. Ancient India's knowledge of metallurgy produced the rust-free iron pillar. In Delhi stands a marvel of ancient engineering, the Iron Pillar of Mehrauli. Erected around the 4th century CE, this pillar, over 7 meters tall, has stood for more than 1,600 years without rusting. Made of nearly pure wrought iron, it showcases advanced metallurgical skills. The secret lies in its composition, a high level of phosphorus that forms a protective layer, preventing corrosion. Scientists still study it today, impressed by the precision of ancient Indian blacksmiths. The pillar bears inscriptions praising King Chandragupta II and was likely part of a larger temple complex. Beyond its technical wonder, the iron pillar also carries cultural significance, standing as a testament to India's mastery of metalwork at a time when much of the world struggled with inferior techniques. This single monument embodies both artistry and science, a silent giant defying the centuries with its enduring strength. The world's first cataract surgery was performed in India. Among the many achievements of ancient Indian medicine, one of the most surprising is cataract surgery. Texts like the Sushruta Samhita describe a procedure called couching, where a curved needle was used to dislodge the cloudy lens of the eye, restoring partial sight. While primitive compared to modern ophthalmology, it was revolutionary for its time. Patients were treated with herbal antiseptics and given strict aftercare instructions to aid recovery. This technique spread beyond India, eventually reaching China and the Islamic world. By the Middle Ages, European doctors were learning from translations of Indian texts. The fact that eye surgery was being performed more than 2,000 years ago in India shows an astonishing depth of medical experimentation and courage. For countless people who faced blindness, these pioneering surgeons offered hope, proving once again that ancient India was a center of innovation in science and healing. The Mauryan Empire united most of the Indian subcontinent. In the 3rd century BCE, the Mauryan Empire became the first power to unify almost the entire Indian subcontinent under one rule. Founded by Chandragupta Maurya and strengthened by his successors, the empire stretched from modern-day Afghanistan in the northwest to Bengal in the east and deep into the Deccan Plateau in the south. Such vast control was nearly unparalleled in the ancient world. The Mauryans established a centralized government with ministers, governors, and a network of spies to maintain order. Roads were built to connect the empire, encouraging trade and communication. What makes the Mauryan achievement so astonishing is not just its scale, but the diversity it encompassed, hundreds of languages, cultures, and religions, all woven into a single political framework. For the first time, the dream of a united India became real. This vast, dynamic empire would leave an enduring mark on history, shaping the region for centuries. Ashoka the Great spread Buddhism across Asia. Ashoka, Chandragupta's grandson, is remembered as one of the most remarkable rulers in history. After a bloody conquest of Kalinga, Ashoka experienced a deep transformation. Horrified by the suffering caused by war, he embraced Buddhism and turned his energy toward peace, compassion, and moral governance. Ashoka sent envoys and missionaries not only across India, but far beyond its borders, to Sri Lanka, Central Asia, and Southeast Asia. These missions spread the teachings of the Buddha across the continent, influencing cultures as far as China and Japan. Under Ashoka, Buddhism grew from a regional faith into a global religion. His promotion of non-violence, tolerance, and respect for all living beings set him apart from most ancient rulers. The image of Ashoka as both a conqueror and a compassionate king remains one of history's most powerful transformations, showing how an emperor's change of heart could shape civilizations across Asia. The edicts of Ashoka were carved into stone and pillars. Ashoka didn't just spread his message through missionaries, he carved it into stone. Across the Indian subcontinent, he had inscriptions engraved on rock faces, cave walls, and towering stone pillars. These edicts, written in local languages and scripts, proclaimed his commitment to Dharma, or moral law. They urged kindness, honesty, tolerance, and respect for all life. Some edicts banned animal sacrifices, others promoted fair treatment of prisoners or encouraged care for the poor. The inscriptions were placed along trade routes and in cities, ensuring they would be seen by ordinary people and travelers alike. The pillars themselves were masterpieces of craftsmanship, polished smooth and often crowned with animal sculptures. The lion capital from Sarnath, for example, later became India's national emblem. These stone proclamations remain some of the earliest and most direct voices we have from an ancient ruler, allowing us to hear Ashoka's ideals across 2 millennia. The Gupta Empire is called a golden age of India. Several centuries after the Mauryas, the Gupta Empire rose in the 4th century CE and is remembered as a golden age of Indian history. Under rulers like Chandragupta I and Samudragupta, India flourished in science, art, literature, and trade. Mathematicians developed the decimal system and refined algebra. Astronomers charted the planets with increasing accuracy. Poets and playwrights like Kalidasa created works that are still celebrated today, blending beauty with philosophical depth. The Gupta period also saw advancements in metallurgy, sculpture, and temple architecture. Unlike the centralized Mauryan system, the Gupta Empire allowed more autonomy to local rulers, yet trade and cultural exchange flourished across its vast territories. Prosperity supported great artistic and scientific achievements, leaving a legacy that influenced later cultures across Asia. When historians call it a golden age, they are capturing the sense of brilliance and creativity that lit up India during the Gupta dynasty's reign. The Chola navy ruled the seas of South Asia. While many empires thrived on land, the Cholas of southern India built their power on the sea. From the 9th to the 13th century, the Chola dynasty developed one of the most formidable naval forces in the ancient world. Their ships sailed across the Indian Ocean, securing trade routes and projecting power deep into Southeast Asia. In the 11th century, the Chola navy launched daring expeditions, conquering parts of Sri Lanka, the Maldives, and even coastal regions of present-day Indonesia. These voyages were not just military, they carried culture as well. Chola art, temple architecture, and religious practices spread abroad, leaving traces still visible in Southeast Asia today. The Chola dynasty's maritime dominance transformed southern India into a hub of international trade, connecting it with China, Arabia, and beyond. The idea of an Indian naval empire commanding distant seas feels astonishing, yet the Cholas achieved exactly that. The Harshavardhana Empire connected North India with trade networks. In the 7th century CE, after the decline of the Guptas, King Harshavardhana rose to power in northern India. Though his reign was shorter and his empire smaller than the Mauryas or Guptas, Harsha was a remarkable ruler. He united large parts of North India, from Punjab to Bengal, and fostered an atmosphere of learning and cultural exchange. Harsha was known for his generosity and patronage of the arts, hosting grand religious assemblies and supporting Buddhist institutions alongside Hindu temples. His court became a destination for scholars, poets, and diplomats. Trade flourished under his rule, with caravans and river routes connecting his empire to Central Asia and beyond. The Chinese monk Xuanzang, who visited during Harsha's reign, described the empire as prosperous and vibrant. Though Harsha's power faded after his death, his efforts bridged the gap between great empires, keeping northern India connected to wider cultural and economic networks. Chandragupta Maurya founded one of the world's largest empires. Before Ashoka, there was Chandragupta Maurya, the man who built the foundation of India's first great empire. Rising from humble beginnings, he seized power in the 4th century BCE, overthrowing the Nanda dynasty with the help of his brilliant advisor Kautilya, also known as Chanakya. Chandragupta went on to conquer vast territories, including lands once controlled by Alexander the Great's successors. His empire stretched across nearly all of northern India and into present-day Afghanistan. Chandragupta established a centralized administration with provincial governors, a standing army, and a complex tax system. His capital, Pataliputra, modern Putna, became one of the greatest cities of its age. What makes Chandragupta fascinating is his personal story, from exile to emperor, a tale of ambition and resilience. He laid the groundwork for a dynasty that would dominate India for over a century, leaving a legacy of unity and power. Kautilya's Arthashastra is a masterpiece of ancient political strategy. Behind Chandragupta Maurya's rise to power was his mentor and strategist Kautilya, also known as Chanakya. He wrote the Arthashastra, a monumental text on statecraft, economics, and military strategy. Often compared to Machiavelli's The Prince, though written nearly 2,000 years earlier, the Arthashastra covers everything from diplomacy and espionage to taxation and law. It describes how a ruler should maintain order, expand territory, and manage resources with both wisdom and ruthlessness. The text reveals a sophisticated understanding of realpolitik, balancing morality with practicality. Kautilya emphasized the importance of spies, alliances, and even psychological tactics to outmaneuver rivals. The Arthashastra demonstrates that ancient Indian thinkers were not only philosophers, but also keen observers of politics and human behavior. It remains one of the most detailed works of governance from the ancient world, showing that the art of ruling was studied in India with unmatched depth. Ancient India's guilds functioned like modern trade unions. Long before modern labor movements, ancient India had shrenis, guilds that organized craftsmen, merchants, and artisans. These guilds regulated quality, fixed prices, trained apprentices, and protected the interests of their members. Carpenters, weavers, metalworkers, and jewelers all formed powerful associations that influenced local economies and sometimes even politics. Guilds often pooled resources to build temples, fund festivals, or support charitable works. They had their own rules, fines, and leadership structures, functioning almost like miniature governments. Some even issued their own seals and coins. What's remarkable is how cooperative and community-focused these organizations were, ensuring stability for workers and fairness in trade. Shrenis reveal a side of ancient India often overlooked, not just kings and empires, but everyday economic life organized with striking sophistication. They remind us that collective action and professional solidarity have been part of human societies for thousands of years. Indian coins were among the earliest to feature punch marks. The earliest coins of India, dating back to around the 6th century BCE, were distinctive, flat pieces of silver stamped with punch marks. Unlike later coins that carried portraits or inscriptions, these bore simple symbols, suns, animals, wheels, or geometric designs. Each mark represented an issuing authority, whether a ruler, a merchant guild, or a regional kingdom. The system allowed coins to serve as reliable units of exchange in markets across the subcontinent. These punch-marked coins show that India had a monetized economy thousands of years ago, supporting complex trade networks both within and beyond its borders. Over time, coins evolved to carry the images of kings, deities, and inscriptions in multiple scripts, reflecting the diversity of Indian culture. But it all began with those simple stamped pieces of silver, small, humble tokens that powered one of the world's earliest and most vibrant economies. Ancient Indian astronomy identified planets invisible to the naked eye. Indian astronomers carefully observed the skies, tracking celestial movements with impressive precision. What's astonishing is that they identified planets like Uranus, Neptune, and possibly even Pluto, long before the invention of telescopes. Some texts, such as the Surya Siddhanta, describe planetary orbits and movements that match the characteristics of these distant bodies. Scholars debate how this knowledge was possible, but the consistency of the descriptions is striking. At the very least, Indian astronomers recognized more than the 5 classical planets visible to the naked eye, suggesting they had methods of observation or inherited knowledge from older traditions. Their fascination with the heavens wasn't merely practical, it was deeply spiritual. Astronomy and astrology were intertwined, with planetary alignments guiding rituals, calendars, and even political decisions. This blending of science and faith gave Indian astronomy a unique depth, uniting precision with wonder. Aryabhata calculated P long before Europe. Aryabhata, one of India's greatest mathematicians and astronomers, lived in the 5th century CE and produced discoveries that resonate even today. In his seminal work, the Aryabhatiya, he calculated the value of pi to 4 decimal places, astonishingly close to the true value. At a time when much of the world still struggled with basic arithmetic, Aryabhata was using advanced trigonometry, algebra, and place value notation. His work laid the foundation for mathematics in both India and the Islamic world, eventually influencing European science centuries later. Aryabhata's genius wasn't limited to numbers. He also described eclipses as natural phenomena caused by the Earth's shadow, rejecting the myth of cosmic demons. His blend of mathematics and astronomy shows how interconnected these fields were in ancient India. The idea that pi, a number central to modern science, was being refined in India 1500 years ago is simply mind-blowing. Indian mathematicians used negative numbers centuries ahead of others. Today, negative numbers are a basic part of mathematics, but their invention was revolutionary. Ancient Indian mathematicians were among the first to treat them systematically. In texts like the Brahmasfuta Siddhanta, written by Brahmagupta in the 7th century CE, rules for negative numbers appear clearly. He described debts as negative and assets as positive, then laid out rules for their addition and subtraction, essentially creating the groundwork for algebra. For example, he explained that a negative times a negative equals a positive, a principle we still teach today. What's remarkable is how practical these ideas were. They arose from real-world problems in trade and accounting, where losses and debts had to be represented mathematically. Centuries before European scholars adopted the concept, Indian mathematicians had already mastered it. This leap of abstraction demonstrates the creativity and logical depth of India's mathematical tradition. The decimal system emerged in ancient India. One of the greatest contributions of ancient India to the world is the decimal system, the system of numbers we use every single day. With its base of 10 and the revolutionary inclusion of 0, it allowed calculations of unprecedented complexity. Indian scholars used place value notation, where the position of a digit determined its value, ones, tens, hundreds, and so on. This simple but brilliant system replaced cumbersome counting methods used elsewhere. The decimal system was transmitted through trade and scholarship, eventually reaching the Islamic world and later Europe, transforming science, engineering, and commerce. Imagine trying to do long division or astronomy without it. Progress would have been nearly impossible. The decimal system is so deeply embedded in daily life that we rarely think about its origins. Yet it was born in India, a gift from ancient scholars that continues to shape the modern world. Ancient Indian calendars could predict eclipses accurately. Indian astronomers developed complex calendar systems that not only tracked the lunar months and solar year, but also predicted eclipses with impressive accuracy. Using careful observation and mathematical calculations, they could determine when the sun or moon would be obscured, centuries before modern science confirmed the mechanics of eclipses. These predictions were not merely academic, they held spiritual significance, guiding rituals and festivals. The Surya Siddhanta, one of the most important astronomical texts, contains formulas for calculating eclipse times that remain remarkably precise. What's striking is that these predictions were achieved without telescopes, relying only on naked eye observation and mathematics. The blending of cosmic cycles with cultural life gave Indian calendars a richness that combined science, religion, and daily living. To look up at a darkened sun thousands of years ago and know exactly why and when it would happen shows the brilliance of ancient Indian astronomy. Astronomers mapped the motions of Jupiter and Saturn. Long before modern telescopes revealed the outer planets in detail, Indian astronomers tracked the movements of Jupiter and Saturn, the two largest planets visible to the naked eye. They calculated their orbital periods with remarkable accuracy, Jupiter's 12 years and Saturn's 30 years. These observations were integrated into calendars, astrological systems, and ritual timings. The Surya Siddhanta and later texts detail their retrograde motions, the apparent backward movement of planets in the sky, and provided mathematical methods to account for it. Such precision reveals the dedication of Indian skywatchers who patiently mapped celestial rhythms across generations. Jupiter and Saturn were also given special significance in astrology, symbolizing wisdom, expansion, discipline, and time. The scientific and spiritual merged seamlessly in these observations. It is extraordinary to think that, with only the naked eye and disciplined calculation, ancient Indian astronomers could describe the clockwork dance of giant planets. Time in ancient India was measured down to microseconds. Indian scholars developed an astonishingly detailed sense of time, dividing it into units far smaller than seconds. Texts describe a unit called a truti, equal to a fraction of a second so small it amounts to just a few microseconds. At the other end of the scale, time was expanded to cosmic cycles lasting billions of years. This dual vision, the minuscule and the infinite, reveals how Indian thinkers saw reality as layered and vast. Such precision likely came from astronomical calculations, where tiny divisions helped track planetary movements. But it also carried philosophical meaning, reflecting the belief that existence unfolds in endless, interwoven rhythms. To measure time with such incredible subtlety thousands of years ago is astonishing, especially when you realize that modern science also works at both extremes, from nanoseconds to cosmic ages. Ancient India embraced the full spectrum of time. Indian philosophers proposed the idea of an expanding universe. In texts like the Rig Veda and later cosmological writings, Indian thinkers described the universe as constantly expanding and contracting in cycles without beginning or end. They envisioned the cosmos as breathing, growing outward and then collapsing inward, only to be reborn again. This idea resonates strikingly with modern cosmology, which describes an expanding universe originating in the Big Bang. While not identical in scientific detail, the philosophical vision was astonishingly close in spirit. These ideas were not speculative daydreams, but part of structured cosmological systems, blending observation with intuition. The fact that ancient Indian philosophers contemplated an infinite, dynamic universe rather than a static, enclosed one shows the depth of their imagination. To think that nearly 3,000 years ago, humans were already picturing the cosmos as an endless expansion is one of the most mind-expanding legacies of ancient Indian thought. Ancient temples were aligned with astronomical events. Many ancient Indian temples were not just places of worship, but also cosmic observatories. Their layouts often aligned with solstices, equinoxes, or specific star risings. In some temples, sunlight passes through doorways or windows to illuminate a deity's statue only on certain days of the year. This precision required deep astronomical knowledge and architectural mastery. For example, the Sun Temple at Konark was designed as a giant stone chariot of the sun god, its wheels doubling as sundials. These alignments connected human ritual with cosmic order, turning the temple into a microcosm of the universe. Pilgrims entering such sacred spaces were not only worshipping, but also participating in a cosmic rhythm measured in light and shadow. The fusion of science, spirituality, and architecture in temple design reveals how seamlessly ancient India wove the heavens into daily and religious life. The Surya Siddhanta is one of the oldest works on astronomy. The Surya Siddhanta, dating back over 1,500 years, is one of the world's oldest surviving texts on astronomy. Attributed to a divine revelation from the sun god, it lays out detailed rules for calculating planetary motions, eclipses, solstices, and equinoxes. The text presents Earth as a sphere, rotating on its axis, and even provides estimates for planetary diameters and distances. Some values, while not perfect, are remarkably close to modern figures. Beyond its science, the Surya Siddhanta blended cosmology with spirituality, showing that the study of the heavens was both sacred and practical. Its influence spread widely, shaping astronomy in India and beyond through translations into other languages. To read the Surya Siddhanta is to glimpse a mind-bending combination of mathematics, observation, and myth, a text that reveals how seriously ancient India studied the universe and how much of their knowledge still amazes scholars today. The Ajanta caves preserve ancient Buddhist art. Carved into a horseshoe-shaped cliff in Maharashtra, the Ajanta caves hold some of the most breathtaking art of the ancient world. Dating back to around the 2nd century BCE, these 30 rock-cut caves were used as monasteries, prayer halls, and sanctuaries for Buddhist monks. What makes Ajanta extraordinary is its art. Walls and ceilings covered with vibrant murals that have survived for nearly 2,000 years. The paintings depict episodes from the life of the Buddha, stories from the Jataka tales, and even scenes of ordinary life: dancers, musicians, kings, and villagers. The colors, made from natural minerals, still glow with remarkable brilliance. Each cave was carefully carved into the rock, complete with intricate pillars, vaulted ceilings, and shrines. Walking into Ajanta today feels like stepping into a timeless gallery where faith and artistry merged. These caves are not only sacred spaces but also masterpieces of world art history. The Ellora caves were carved from solid rock. A short journey from Ajanta brings you to Ellora, another astonishing complex of rock-cut caves, created between the 6th and 10th centuries CE. Unlike Ajanta, which was primarily Buddhist, Ellora is unique because it houses Hindu, Buddhist and Jain temples all side by side. This reflects India's deep tradition of religious coexistence. What makes Ellora so impressive is the sheer scale of its engineering. Entire hillsides were carved into elaborate temples and monasteries filled with detailed sculptures of deities, saints and mythological scenes. The craftsmanship is breathtaking, with ceilings and walls carved into delicate patterns and entire centuries cut from living stone. Imagine workers chiseling away for centuries, transforming solid basalt rock into living spaces of worship. Ellora stands as a symbol of both artistic devotion and India's remarkable ability to embrace multiple traditions in harmony, all preserved in a monumental landscape of stone. The Kailasa temple was cut from a single mountain. Among the wonders of Ellora, the Kailasa temple stands apart as one of the most extraordinary feats of ancient engineering. Dedicated to Lord Shiva, it was carved from a single massive rock, removing over 200,000 tons of stone. Built in the 8th century under the Rashtrakuta kings, the temple is larger than the Parthenon in Athens and entirely freestanding, yet it was never built in pieces. Instead, workers carved downward from the top of the mountain, hollowing out the rock to reveal a sprawling temple complex filled with shrines, pillars, courtyards, and intricate sculptures. The precision is so astounding that modern engineers still marvel at how it was accomplished with only hammers, chisels, and determination. The Kailasa temple is not only a religious monument, but also a symbol of human vision and endurance. It is a mountain transformed into art, one of the boldest creations in history. Ancient Indian sculptors worked with incredible precision. From the Indus Valley figurines to the grand temples of the south, Indian sculptors demonstrated an artistry and precision that continues to astonish. They mastered stone, metal, terracotta, and wood, creating works ranging from delicate ornaments to colossal statues. The detailing was meticulous. Jewelry etched onto stone figures, lifelike expressions captured in bronze, and elaborate patterns carved into temple walls. Sculptors often followed guidelines laid out in ancient texts, ensuring harmony and proportion in every form. Yet they also infused their creations with emotion and vitality, bringing gods, animals, and humans to life. The bronze Nataraja statues of the Chola period, showing Shiva as the cosmic dancer, are masterpieces of both technique and symbolism. What's remarkable is that these works were created without modern tools, relying on skill passed down through generations. Ancient Indian sculpture reflects not just craftsmanship, but a profound blending of artistry, devotion, and technical brilliance. Indian temple architecture evolved into hundreds of styles. Temples in India were not uniform. They blossomed into a dazzling variety of architectural styles across centuries and regions. In the north, temples often featured tall, curving towers called shikaras, while southern temples rose in tiered, pyramid-like forms known as vimanas. Each dynasty added its own artistic signature. The Chalukyas carved temples out of sandstone cliffs, while the Pallavas developed elegant, rock-cut sanctuaries. Later, the Cholas created massive stone complexes filled with bronze icons and soaring gateways. Beyond aesthetics, temples were designed to represent the cosmos itself, with layouts symbolizing mountains, rivers, and celestial alignments. Inside, richly carved pillars and sanctums created atmospheres both intimate and majestic. This architectural evolution reflects India's diversity as communities adapted designs to local traditions, materials, and beliefs. The sheer range of temples, from small shrines to sprawling complexes, shows how architecture became a living canvas for devotion and creativity. Stepwells in India were both functional and beautiful. In the arid regions of Western India, stepwells were built as ingenious water storage systems, and they became architectural marvels in their own right. Known as baolis or valves, these wells were more than simple pits. They were vast, multi-storied structures with staircases descending deep into the earth, lined with carved walls, pillars, and niches. Some stepwells, like the Rani Ki Vav in Gujarat, are decorated with thousands of sculptures depicting gods, goddesses, and mythological scenes. Functionally, they provided cool water throughout the year and acted as gathering places for communities. Social and spiritual life revolved around these stepwells, where women fetched water, travelers rested in shaded chambers, and rituals were performed. They embody the perfect fusion of utility and beauty. Even today, wandering through their descending corridors feels like stepping into an underground palace, revealing the brilliance of Indian engineering in harmony with art. Ancient India developed early techniques for polished stone pillars. One of the signature achievements of Mauryan architecture was the creation of highly polished stone pillars, many of which still stand today. These pillars, often rising over 10 meters tall, were carved from single pieces of sandstone and finished with such precision that they shine as though coated with glass. How the Mauryans achieved this mirror-like polish remains a subject of debate among historians, as it required tools and techniques far ahead of their time. The pillars often bore inscriptions, especially Ashoka's edicts, and were topped with beautifully sculpted capitals, such as the famous lion capital at Sarnath. These pillars were not just decorative, they served as moral and political messages, visible to all. They reveal the combination of technical mastery and cultural ambition that defined ancient India, creating monuments that have endured for over 2,000 years without losing their luster. The Great Stupa at Sanchi is over 2,000 years old. In the heart of Madhya Pradesh lies the Great Stupa at Sanchi, one of the oldest stone structures in India, dating back to the 3rd century BCE. Commissioned by Emperor Ashoka, it enshrines relics of the Buddha and became a center of pilgrimage. The stupa's design is profoundly symbolic. Its dome represents the universe, its central pillar the axis of the world, and its 4 gateways face the cardinal directions, covered with carvings illustrating the life of Tama, the Buddha. Over centuries, it was expanded and decorated, but its essential form remains a powerful architectural statement. The Great Stupa reflects how early Buddhist architecture blended spirituality with geometric precision. Even today, walking around its circular path in quiet meditation connects visitors to a tradition of devotion stretching back over 2 millennia. It stands as both a sacred monument and an enduring link to India's ancient religious life. Indian terracotta figurines capture everyday ancient life. Archaeologists have uncovered thousands of terracotta figurines from India's ancient past, each offering a glimpse into daily life. Unlike monumental temples or royal inscriptions, these small clay figures depict ordinary people, animals, and household scenes. Women adorned with jewelry, musicians playing instruments, farmers with oxen, and children with toys all appear in terracotta, showing us details that history books often leave out. Some figurines were likely toys, while others served as ritual objects or offerings. Their artistry ranges from simple forms to intricate designs, reflecting both folk creativity and refined craftsmanship. What makes them fascinating is their intimacy. While empires rose and fell, these clay figures captured the rhythms of everyday existence. To hold one of these figurines today is to touch the laughter, work, and devotion of people who lived thousands of years ago, reminding us that history is not only grand, but also deeply personal. The Sun Temple of Konark was designed as a giant chariot. On the eastern coast of India, in Odisha, stands the Sun Temple of Konark, built in the 13th century CE. This UNESCO World Heritage Site was designed as a colossal stone chariot dedicated to the sun god, Surya. The temple's walls are carved into 24 massive wheels, each over 3 meters in diameter, representing the hours of the day. 7 stone horses appear to pull the temple eastward, toward the rising sun. The structure is covered with intricate carvings, dancers, deities, animals, and celestial beings, creating a visual feast of mythology and daily life. Beyond its spiritual significance, the temple also functioned as a solar calendar. The wheels and shadows were used to track time with remarkable precision. Though partially ruined, Konark remains one of the most spectacular examples of Indian temple architecture, blending science, symbolism, and artistry in a breathtaking vision of cosmic grandeur. Ancient India's trade reached as far as Rome. Long before the Silk Road became famous, Indian merchants were already sending goods across oceans and deserts. Excavations in Roman ports have revealed Indian spices, cotton textiles, and precious gems, while Roman coins have been found in Indian sites. Trade routes connected India with the Mediterranean, via Arabia and Egypt, creating a bustling exchange of goods and culture. Pepper from southern India was so prized in Rome that it was said to be worth its weight in silver. Ivory, pearls, and fine textiles were shipped west, while India imported wine, glassware, and luxury items from Europe. This global trade made India a cornerstone of the ancient world economy. It is extraordinary to think that 2,000 years ago, a Roman citizen might wear Indian silk, while an Indian merchant counted Roman coins, proof that globalization is not a modern phenomenon, but an ancient reality. Roman coins have been found in Indian ruins. One of the most striking proofs of Indo-Roman trade is the discovery of Roman coins deep in Indian soil. Archaeologists have uncovered caches of gold and silver coins, bearing the faces of emperors like Augustus, Nero, and Tiberius in sites across southern and western India. These coins were not only used for trade, but sometimes repurposed as jewelry, with holes drilled to wear them as pendants. The sheer number of coins suggests massive exports from India to Rome, especially of luxury goods like spices, gems, and fine cotton. Roman writers even complained that their empire was draining its wealth to satisfy its appetite for Indian goods. The coins serve as silent witnesses to this ancient economic connection, linking two great civilizations across continents. To hold a Roman coin found in India is to feel the tangible weight of history, money that once crossed oceans and cultures. India was famous for its spices in the ancient world. For thousands of years, India's spices were treasures sought across the globe. Black pepper, cardamom, cinnamon, turmeric, and ginger grew abundantly, transforming not only Indian cuisine, but also global tastes. Ancient traders carried these spices along land routes and across the seas, making them some of the most valuable commodities in the world. Pepper from Kerala was especially prized in Rome, where it was a luxury for the wealthy. Spices were not only flavoring agents, they were used as medicine, preservatives, perfumes, and even offerings in religious rituals. The fame of India's spices was so great that centuries later, it drove European explorers to seek direct sea routes, eventually reshaping global history. But the roots of this trade stretch deep into antiquity, when Indian spice jars scented kitchens and temples from Egypt to China, and the fragrance of India was carried on every wind. Indian cotton changed ancient textiles forever. Cotton is so common today that we rarely think of its origins. But it was in India that cotton was first cultivated and woven into textiles. As early as the Indus Valley Civilization, cotton fabrics were spun, dyed, and traded. Indian cotton was light, breathable, and comfortable, making it ideal for hot climates, and it quickly became a highly desired export. Ancient Greek and Roman writers marveled at these tree-grown fabrics, unlike anything they had seen before. Indian weavers mastered techniques of dyeing and printing, creating fabrics with vibrant colors and patterns. Over centuries, Indian cotton transformed global trade, inspiring imitations in Egypt, China, and eventually Europe. It is astonishing to think that a piece of cotton cloth, woven thousands of years ago in India, could influence clothing traditions across continents. From humble village looms to royal courts, Indian cotton reshaped the history of textiles. Pearl diving in ancient India supplied the world with gems. Along the southern coast of India, especially in the Gulf of Mannar, pearl fishing was a thriving industry for thousands of years. Divers trained from youth plunged deep into the sea without modern equipment, holding their breath to gather oysters from the seabed. The pearls extracted were prized not only in India but also in Rome, Egypt, China, and Arabia. These gems symbolized wealth, beauty, and divine power, often adorning crowns, jewelry, and temple offerings. Ancient texts describe pearl fisheries yielding immense wealth for kings and merchants, with trade networks spreading across the known world. Despite the dangers, sharks, drowning, and exhaustion, divers returned to the waters season after season, driven by demand for these luminous treasures. Pearl diving in ancient India shows both human daring and the global reach of Indian luxury goods, linking remote fishing villages to the palaces of emperors. The Silk Road connected India with China and beyond. India was a vital link in the famous Silk Road, the trade network that connected East Asia with the Mediterranean. Indian merchants traded silk from China, spices and textiles from India, and precious stones mined in its hills. These goods traveled across deserts, mountains, and seas, carried by caravans and ships. But the Silk Road was more than commerce. It was a highway of ideas. Buddhism spread from India into Central Asia and China along these same routes. Philosophies, technologies, and artistic styles flowed back and forth, weaving civilizations together. Indian traders and monks established communities in distant lands, leaving behind inscriptions and artifacts that still survive today. The Silk Road reveals India not as an isolated land, but as a central hub in one of history's greatest exchanges, where goods, beliefs, and cultures mingled in a flow as vast as the route itself. Ancient Indian ships sailed across the Indian Ocean. India's maritime traditions stretched deep into antiquity. Wooden ships, built with teak and other durable timbers, carried merchants and explorers across the Arabian Sea, the Bay of Bengal, and beyond. Ancient texts like the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea describe Indian vessels visiting ports in Arabia and Africa. Some even reached Southeast Asia, carrying goods, settlers, and culture. These ships were sturdy, capable of withstanding monsoon winds, and often large enough to carry elephants or horses for trade and warfare. Navigation relied on the stars, seasonal winds, and accumulated knowledge of generations of sailors. The voyages were not only economic but cultural. Indian scripts, religions, and art traveled across the ocean, shaping distant lands. Long before European empires dominated the seas, Indian sailors had already mastered the Indian Ocean, creating a maritime world of trade and exchange that linked continents together. The port of Lothal was among the world's earliest docks. Deep in the ruins of the Indus Valley lies Lothal, a site with one of the world's earliest known docks, dating back to around 2400 BCE. This remarkable structure connected the city directly to river and sea routes, enabling it to become a hub of trade. Archaeologists have found evidence of bead workshops, warehouses, and goods imported from Mesopotamia, proving Lothal's importance in global commerce. The dock itself, built from baked bricks and stone, was carefully designed to manage water levels and protect ships. This suggests an advanced understanding of tidal flows and hydraulics. Lothal shows us that ancient India was not only building cities and temples, but also engaging in international maritime trade nearly 5,000 years ago. To walk through the ruins of Lothal is to stand at the birthplace of global seafaring, where some of humanity's first sailors launched into history. Indian steel was highly prized in the Middle East. For centuries, India was famous for producing some of the finest steel in the world. Known as Wootz steel, it was exported as early as the first millennium BCE and became legendary across the Middle East. Blacksmiths forged it into blades with incredible strength and sharpness, creating the famous Damascus swords prized by warriors and kings. The secret lay in the precise smelting and carbon content, techniques mastered by Indian metallurgists. Ancient texts describe furnaces, crucibles, and special ores used to produce the steel's unique patterns and properties. Traders carried Indian steel as far as Rome and later Europe, where it was considered a luxury material. Scientists today still study Wootz steel to understand its molecular structure. The reputation of Indian steelmakers was so great that their products shaped weaponry and craftsmanship across continents, proof of India's innovation in metallurgy. Indian merchants traveled as far as Southeast Asia. Indian merchants were not content to stay within their own borders. They sailed across the Bay of Bengal and established thriving trade in Southeast Asia. By the early centuries CE, Indian traders and settlers had reached present-day Thailand, Cambodia, Indonesia, and Vietnam. They carried not only goods like spices, textiles, and beads, but also cultural treasures: Sanskrit inscriptions, Hindu and Buddhist traditions, temple architecture, and artistic motifs. Over time, entire kingdoms in Southeast Asia adopted Indian scripts and religious practices, blending them with local customs to create rich hybrid cultures. The great temples of Angkor in Cambodia and Prambanan in Indonesia bear witness to this deep influence. Indian merchants were not conquerors but cultural ambassadors, spreading ideas and artistry as they traded. Their journeys reveal how India shaped the broader region, leaving legacies still visible in the languages, religions, and monuments of Southeast Asia today. Ancient Indian music used 7 notes like today. The roots of Indian music stretch deep into antiquity, and remarkably, the system of 7 notes, Sa, Re, Ga, Ma, Pa, Di, Ha, Ni, has survived almost unchanged for thousands of years. References to these notes appear in the Vedas, where chants and hymns were sung with precise tonal patterns. This ancient system is strikingly similar to the 7-note scale used in Western music, though Indian traditions evolved in their own unique way, creating countless ragas or melodic frameworks. Instruments like the veena and flute accompanied these early compositions, blending sound with spirituality. Music in ancient India was not only entertainment, it was considered a sacred path to connect with the divine, capable of influencing emotions, moods, and even the natural world. The continuity of this 7-note system is breathtaking, a musical thread linking modern concerts to rituals performed more than 3,000 years ago. The Natya Shastra described dance and drama in great detail. Around 2,000 years ago, an extraordinary text called the Natya Shastra was composed, attributed to the sage Bharata. It is one of the earliest known treatises on performing arts, covering drama, dance, and music with astonishing detail. Spanning 36 chapters, it lays out everything from stage design and costumes to gestures, facial expressions, and emotional states. According to the Natya Shastra, art was not just performance. It was a form of spiritual and emotional expression meant to uplift audiences and reflect cosmic truths. The text identifies 9 rasas, or emotional flavors, such as joy, sorrow, anger, and wonder, which performers were expected to evoke. This idea still shapes Indian classical dance and theatre today. What's fascinating is that the Natya Shastra is both an artistic manual and a philosophy of aesthetics, showing that ancient India treated performance as a profound science of human experience. Sanskrit theatre influenced arts across Asia. Theatre in ancient India, performed in Sanskrit, was a sophisticated art form, blending music, dance, and poetry. Dramas often depicted stories from the epics, the Mahabharata and Ramayana, but also included romances, comedies, and social commentaries. Playwrights like Kalidasa, who lived in the Gupta period, created masterpieces such as Shakuntala, which later inspired writers in Europe when it was translated centuries later. Sanskrit theatre wasn't confined to India. As Indian culture spread into Southeast Asia, theatrical traditions traveled with it. Shadow puppetry in Indonesia, masked dances in Cambodia, and court dramas in Thailand all show echoes of Sanskrit drama's influence. What made it powerful was its integration of multiple art forms: dialogue, song, gesture, and elaborate staging. Even today, elements of Sanskrit theatre live on in classical Indian drama and dance. It was storytelling at its most immersive, bridging cultures with its universal themes. Indian instruments like the veena are thousands of years old. Among the oldest known string instruments is the veena, described in ancient texts and depicted in sculpture as early as 2,000 years ago. This large, plucked instrument became a symbol of learning and the arts, often shown in the hands of Saraswati, the goddess of wisdom. The veena's rich, resonant sound carried through temples and courts, accompanying hymns, dances, and epics. Alongside it, instruments like bamboo flutes, drums such as the enridangdam, and cymbals were used in both sacred and secular contexts. These instruments were not just for entertainment, they were believed to harmonize human life with cosmic rhythms. What's striking is how many of these instruments are still played in India today. Their designs only slightly refined, but their essence unchanged. To hear a veena performance now is to listen to music that connects modern ears with audiences of the ancient world. Ancient India had a rich tradition of storytelling. Storytelling in ancient India was a way of weaving wisdom into narrative, passing knowledge from generation to generation. From campfires to royal courts, tales entertained while teaching values, ethics, and practical lessons. Oral traditions carried myths, fables, and parables long before they were written down. The Jataka tales recounted the previous lives of the Buddha, each story teaching compassion or morality. Village storytellers, or kathakas, brought epics like the Ramayana and Mahabharata to life with song, gesture, and rhythm. These performances were immersive, communal events where history, myth, and philosophy blurred together. Storytelling also shaped education. Riddles, allegories, and animal tales made complex ideas easier to understand. This tradition of blending entertainment with learning is one reason Indian stories traveled so widely, influencing cultures far beyond its borders. The love of narrative is one of India's most enduring legacies, stretching back thousands of years. The Panchatantra influenced tales across the world. One of the most famous collections of Indian fables is the Panchatantra, a set of animal stories written around 2,000 years ago. Designed to teach political wisdom and practical life lessons, the stories often feature clever animals like lions, jackals, and crows. Each tale contains moral insights wrapped in engaging plots. What's extraordinary is how far these stories traveled. The Panchatantra was translated into Persian, Arabic, and Greek, and from there spread across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Many of Aesop's fables, European fairy tales, and even stories in the Arabian Nights trace their roots back to the Panchatantra. Its influence on global literature is immeasurable. To this day, children's storybooks around the world carry echoes of these Indian tales. It is remarkable to think that wisdom from ancient Indian storytellers continues to guide, delight, and teach across continents and centuries. Indian poets wrote epic works in multiple languages. India's literary tradition is astonishing not only in its depth, but also in its linguistic diversity. Sanskrit produced towering works like Kalidasa's Shakuntala and the vast epics of the Mahabharata and Ramayana. But across the centuries, poets also composed in Prakrit, Tamil, Pali, and other regional languages. Sangam literature from southern India, dating back over 2,000 years, contains exquisite love poems and war songs. Court poets celebrated kings and dynasties, while wandering bards carried their verses from village to village. What makes this tradition remarkable is how it blended beauty with philosophy, art with ethics. Poetry was not only entertainment, but also a vehicle for exploring human emotions, social values, and spiritual insights. From palace halls to rural gatherings, poetry was treasured in every corner of ancient India. Its enduring influence can still be felt in the rhythms of Indian languages today. The Rig Veda contains hymns that are still sung today. The Rig Veda, one of the world's oldest known texts, is a collection of over 1,000 hymns composed more than 3,000 years ago. These hymns praise gods like Agni, the fire deity, and Indra, the stormbringer, but they also contain reflections on cosmic mysteries, nature, and the human spirit. What is truly astonishing is that these hymns are not relics locked in dusty manuscripts. They are still sung in Vedic rituals today. Passed down orally with extraordinary precision, their melodies and rhythms have survived millennia. Chanting the Rig Veda is considered a sacred act, preserving the vibrations of sound itself as a form of spiritual connection. To listen to a Rigvedic chant now is to hear the same words and tunes that echoed across the plains of ancient India, an unbroken link to humanity's earliest poetry and devotion. Ancient Indian art captured myth, nature, and daily life. From cave paintings to intricate carvings, art in ancient India reflected the fullness of life. Murals at Ajanta show kings, monks, and villagers alongside celestial beings, while sculptures in temples depict gods with multiple arms symbolizing cosmic power. Yet art also captured the ordinary: mothers cradling children, farmers at work, musicians performing. Terracotta figurines reveal details of clothing and hairstyles, while stone reliefs show bustling marketplaces and city life. The use of vibrant colors and delicate lines gave Indian art a sense of vitality, blending the sacred with the everyday. Symbolism played a central role. A lotus might represent purity, while animals carried spiritual meaning. What makes this art so engaging is its humanity. It reminds us that ancient people lived with the same joys, struggles, and aspirations as we do, captured forever in pigments, clay, and stone. Mandalas expressed sacred geometry and cosmic order. Mandalas, geometric diagrams rooted in Indian tradition, are more than beautiful patterns. They are symbolic maps of the universe. In Hindu and Buddhist contexts, mandalas represented the cosmos, with a central point symbolizing the source of creation and radiating shapes reflecting cosmic balance. Constructed with astonishing symmetry, they were used in meditation, rituals, and temple designs. Ancient artists created mandalas on paper, walls, and even as large floor patterns made of colored sand or flowers. The precision of their geometry reveals a deep understanding of mathematics and aesthetics. Beyond their visual appeal, mandalas functioned as spiritual tools, guiding the mind toward focus and inner harmony. Their influence spread across Asia, inspiring Tibetan sand mandalas and architectural layouts in Southeast Asia. To gaze at a mandala is to glimpse how ancient India united art, mathematics, and spirituality into a single symbol of cosmic order. Chess originated in ancient India as chaturanga. What we know today as chess began in ancient India, where a game called chaturanga emerged around the 6th century CE. The word means 4 divisions, referring to the 4 parts of an army: infantry, cavalry, elephants, and chariots. Each was represented by a piece on the board. The game spread to Persia, where it became shatranj, and from there traveled into the Islamic world and medieval Europe, eventually evolving into modern chess. What's fascinating is how much of its original spirit remains intact: strategic movement, the idea of checkmate, and the focus on foresight and planning. Chaturanga was more than recreation. It reflected the military and political realities of ancient India. Generals and kings may have sharpened their strategic thinking through its play. To sit at a chessboard today is to participate in a game that has connected minds for over 14 centuries. Snakes and ladders began as a moral game in India. Long before it became a playful pastime for children worldwide, Snakes and Ladders was created in India as a moral teaching tool. Known as Moksha Patan, the board represented life's journey, filled with opportunities to rise through virtue and pitfalls that dragged one down through vice. Ladders symbolized qualities like honesty, compassion, and faith, while snakes embodied greed, anger, and deceit. The ultimate goal was not simply reaching the end, but achieving spiritual liberation, moksha. The game was more than entertainment. It was a lesson in morality, played by both children and adults to remind them of the importance of righteous living. When it traveled to England in the 19th century, the spiritual messages faded, and it became a simple race to the finish. Yet its origins remain a beautiful example of how ancient India turned even games into pathways of teaching wisdom and reflection. Polo was played by ancient Indian nobility. Polo, often associated with Central Asia and Persia, has deep roots in India as well. Known as Chogan or Poo, the game was played by Indian nobility for centuries. Kings and princes mounted their finest horses, competing in fast-paced matches that combined horsemanship, strategy, and team skill. Polo was more than sport. It was training for war. Cavalry skills were sharpened on the field, and the game helped nobles perfect their coordination and endurance in battle-like conditions. Courts across northern India became centers of polo, with rulers sponsoring matches that were both festive and prestigious. Later, the Mughal emperors also embraced the game, making it a symbol of royal leisure and refinement. Watching warriors thunder across a field with sticks and balls must have been exhilarating. Polo's Indian legacy shows how ancient pastimes were never only about play. They often reflected the martial spirit of the age. Wrestling was practiced in ancient Indian arenas. Wrestling, or Malayuddha, was one of the most popular physical contests in ancient India. Texts like the Mahabharata describe legendary bouts, including the epic struggle between Bhima and Javasantha. Wrestling wasn't just brute force. It was a disciplined martial art with its own techniques, holds, and training methods. Wrestlers, called mallas, trained in special arenas known as akhadas, where they combined exercise, diet, and discipline to build strength and endurance. The sport carried both entertainment and ritual significance, often performed at festivals or royal courts. Wrestling was also linked to spiritual practice, emphasizing control of the body and mind. Some techniques described in ancient manuals survive today in traditional Indian wrestling styles. such as kushti. To watch these matches was to see not only a contest of muscle, but also a display of skill, tradition, and cultural pride stretching back thousands of years. Ancient Indian archery was legendary in warfare. In ancient Indian warfare, archery was not only a practical weapon, but an art of precision and skill. Epic stories like the Ramayana and Mahabharata are filled with legendary archers, Arjuna, Karna, Rama, whose mastery of the bow became symbolic of focus, discipline, and divine favor. Bows ranged from simple wooden designs to powerful composite weapons capable of piercing armor. Archers trained for years, learning to shoot while standing, riding horses, or even from chariots. They also developed advanced techniques, such as firing multiple arrows at once or striking targets in darkness by sound. Archery competitions were common at royal courts, where princes proved their worth. Beyond myth, archaeological evidence confirms the importance of archery in India's military history. It was the skill that could determine the fate of battles, and in stories and traditions, the bow remains an enduring symbol of power and destiny. Board games were popular pastimes in ancient India. The people of ancient India loved games of strategy and chance, and many of them are still played today in modern forms. Alongside dice games and snakes and ladders, one of the most famous was Chaturanga, the ancestor of chess. Another was Pachisi, a cross-and-circle game played on cloth boards, with pieces moved according to cowrie shell throws. Kings and nobles often played Pachisi in grand courtyards, sometimes using real people as game pieces in enormous versions of the board. Games served many purposes. They entertained, taught strategic thinking, and reflected philosophical ideas about fate and choice. Even ordinary families enjoyed board games, passing time together with laughter and competition. The survival of these games into modern life, chess, ludo, dice, shows just how enduring Indian innovations in play have been. For the ancients, games were both joy and a reflection of life's unpredictability. Hunting was both a sport and a royal ritual. In ancient India, hunting was far more than survival. It was a royal pursuit that combined sport, ritual, and display of power. Kings and princes organized grand hunts, riding into forests with entourages of soldiers, hunters, and elephants. They tracked tigers, lions, deer, and wild boar, both to test their skill and to assert their dominance over nature. Hunting was also woven into religious and cultural life. Ritual hunts were conducted during certain festivals, symbolizing victory over chaos and the taming of the wild. Epic tales describe kings proving their bravery through hunting feats, while inscriptions boast of rulers' prowess with bow and spear. Yet hunting also had practical functions, as it provided training for warfare and controlled dangerous animals near settlements. It was a dramatic spectacle, blending necessity, ceremony, and royal prestige, reflecting the relationship between humans and the natural world in ancient India. Indian martial arts traditions are centuries old. The martial arts of India are some of the oldest in the world, with traditions stretching back thousands of years. Known broadly as Kalaripayattu in the south and Malayuddha in the north, these disciplines blended physical training with spiritual philosophy. Fighters trained with weapons such as swords, spears, and shields, but also mastered unarmed combat techniques. Movements were often inspired by animals, the agility of a cat, the ferocity of a tiger. Training emphasized flexibility, speed, and awareness, sometimes linked with breathing exercises and meditative practices. Martial arts were not just for war, they were also performed at festivals, demonstrating skill and discipline. Kalaripayattu in particular is often called the mother of martial arts, influencing later traditions in Asia. These arts reveal the Indian view that combat was not only physical but also mental and spiritual, requiring balance of body, mind, and spirit. Ancient Indian warriors used war elephants in battle. Few images of ancient warfare are as dramatic as that of war elephants, and India was one of the first civilizations to use them systematically. Elephants, armored and carrying warriors, became living tanks on the battlefield. Their size and power struck fear into enemy troops, scattering cavalry and infantry alike. Kings maintained large stables of trained war elephants, overseen by expert mahouts who guided them with skill. Elephants carried towers on their backs, where archers and spear fighters launched attacks. The use of elephants is described in epics and confirmed in historical accounts, such as the battles of Alexander the Great against Indian kings. While they were formidable, they were also unpredictable, sometimes turning against their own side in panic. Yet their presence symbolized royal might and divine favor. For centuries, the war elephant was the ultimate weapon of Indian armies, a breathtaking blend of nature and strategy. Festivals often combined sports, music, and rituals. Festivals in ancient India were not just religious events, they were cultural gatherings that brought communities together in joy, music, and competition. During major festivals, towns filled with music from flutes and drums, while dancers performed traditional routines. Wrestling matches, archery contests, and races entertained crowds, blending physical sport with ritual significance. Markets sprang up alongside the celebrations where traders sold food, jewelry, and crafts. Temples became focal points of activity, with rituals and processions honoring the gods. These festivals reinforced social bonds, uniting people of all classes in shared celebration. They also carried symbolic meaning, marking the cycles of seasons, harvests, and cosmic rhythms. What makes them fascinating is how multifaceted they were: spiritual, artistic, athletic, and economic, all at once. Ancient Indian festivals reveal a society where joy, devotion, and community intertwined seamlessly, turning every celebration into a living tapestry of culture. Ancient India revered rivers as living deities. Rivers were not just bodies of water in ancient India, they were living goddesses, revered as sacred sources of life. The Ganges, Yamuna, Saraswati, and many others were honored with rituals, songs, and pilgrimages. Bathing in their waters was believed to purify the soul and wash away sins. Rivers nourished crops, carried trade, and sustained settlements, making them both practical lifelines and spiritual symbols. Myths told of gods descending into rivers, and temples rose along their banks. Festivals like Kumbh Mela celebrated the confluence of rivers as cosmic events, drawing vast gatherings of people. The reverence of rivers shows the profound respect ancient Indians had for nature, seeing water not only as resource, but as divinity itself. This sacred relationship between people and rivers remains alive today, with rituals on the Ganges echoing traditions that began thousands of years ago. Sacred fires burned in Vedic rituals for centuries. In Vedic tradition, fire was more than light and warmth. It was a sacred bridge between humans and gods. Rituals called yagnas centered on carefully tended fires, where offerings of ghee, grains, and herbs were cast into the flames. The fire deity, Agni, was believed to carry these offerings upward to the divine realm. Priests or Brahmins chanted hymns from the Vedas in precise rhythms as smoke curled skyward, symbolizing communication with the cosmos. These rituals could be simple family offerings or vast royal ceremonies involving thousands of participants. The sacred fire also marked important life events, such as marriages and coronations. What's extraordinary is the continuity. Sacred fires still burn in many Hindu rituals today, making them one of the world's oldest living traditions. The flame that flickers in modern temples connects directly to fires tended in ancient India thousands of years ago. The idea of Dharma shaped ancient Indian life. In ancient India, life was guided by the concept of Dharma, a word with meaning so deep it is almost untranslatable. Dharma was duty, law, righteousness, and cosmic order all at once. It meant living in harmony with one's role in society, family, and the universe. Kings upheld Dharma through justice, priests preserved it through rituals, and common people practiced it through honesty and moral living. The epics, like the Mahabharata and Ramayana, revolve around the struggle to uphold Dharma in difficult circumstances. What's striking is how practical it was. Dharma was not just lofty philosophy, but everyday guidance: how to treat parents, how to farm fairly, how to rule with compassion. It was believed that by following Dharma, both society and the cosmos remained balanced. Even today, the word carries power, showing how one ancient idea shaped millennia of thought and behavior. The concept of karma emerged in ancient philosophy. Another powerful idea born in ancient India is karma, the belief that every action has consequences, in this life or the next. Rooted in early Vedic thought and expanded in Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism, karma linked morality to the cosmic order. Good deeds brought positive results. Harmful actions brought suffering. What made karma revolutionary was its fairness. Even kings could not escape it, and even the humblest person could shape their destiny through actions. Unlike divine punishment imposed from above, karma was a natural law, as inevitable as gravity. It encouraged self-reflection, responsibility, and compassion, reminding people that choices echo across time. Karma traveled far beyond India, influencing religious and philosophical traditions across Asia. Today, it remains one of the most widely recognized ideas from Indian thought. The notion that our actions ripple outward, shaping lives and futures, continues to resonate with profound simplicity and truth. Temples were centers of both worship and learning. Temples in ancient India were not just sacred spaces, they were the beating hearts of communities. They housed deities, but they also served as schools, gathering halls, and cultural centers. Priests taught philosophy and rituals. Scholars studied astronomy, mathematics, and languages. Musicians and dancers performed as acts of devotion. Temples often owned land, which funded schools, hospitals, and food distribution. They preserved manuscripts, hosted debates, and trained generations of students in the Gurukula system, where knowledge was passed from teacher to disciple. Architecturally, temples were designed as microcosms of the universe, their walls and towers filled with symbolic carvings that taught cosmic truths through art. In many ways, temples were universities, libraries, theaters, and observatories all in one. They show how, in ancient India, learning and spirituality were never separated. Knowledge itself was seen as sacred, a gift offered to both gods and humanity. The Bhagavad Gita explored duty and the self. One of the most profound texts of ancient India is the Bhagavad Gita, a section of the epic Mahabharata. In the midst of a battlefield, the warrior Arjuna hesitates, torn between his duty to fight and his grief at fighting kin. His charioteer, who is none other than Krishna, reveals timeless wisdom. The Gita explores questions of duty, morality, devotion, and the nature of the self. It teaches that one must act according to Dharma, but without attachment to results. It introduces paths of devotion, knowledge, and selfless action as ways to reach liberation. What makes the Gita extraordinary is its universality. Though rooted in a particular moment, Its lessons apply to anyone grappling with difficult choices. For centuries, it has been read not just as scripture but as philosophy and poetry, offering solace, courage, and clarity. It remains one of humanity's most inspiring dialogues on life's deepest questions. Ancient India nurtured many religions side by side. Far from being a land of a single faith, ancient India was home to a vibrant tapestry of religions that coexisted, interacted, and often flourished together. Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and later Sikhism all have roots in the subcontinent, alongside diverse tribal and folk traditions. Kings patronized multiple religions, building temples, monasteries, and stupas. Ashoka supported both Buddhism and Hinduism, while the Guptas sponsored Hindu art without suppressing Buddhist and Jain institutions. Pilgrims and monks of different faiths traveled together along trade routes, exchanging ideas and practices. This pluralism created an atmosphere of intellectual ferment, where philosophies debated and evolved without losing their distinct identities. Ancient India shows us a model of religious diversity, where multiple spiritual paths were seen not as threats, but as different roads to truth. It's a legacy of tolerance and dialogue that shaped Indian civilization and influenced much of Asia. Buddhism and Jainism emerged in India's heartlands. In the 6th century BCE, two powerful new religions arose in the Ganges plains: Buddhism and Jainism. Both challenged existing traditions, emphasizing compassion, non-violence, and self-discipline. The Buddha, once a prince named Siddhartha Gautama, taught the Four Noble Truths and the path to end suffering through mindfulness and ethical living. Mahavira, the great teacher of Jainism, preached radical non-violence, urging his followers to avoid harming even the smallest living beings. These faiths gained immense popularity, spreading across India and far beyond. Buddhism traveled through trade routes into Sri Lanka, China, Japan, and Southeast Asia, while Jainism thrived especially in Western India, producing a rich tradition of philosophy, art, and architecture. What's remarkable is how these religions shaped global values. Compassion, mindfulness, and non-violence are now recognized worldwide. Their emergence reveals India as a cradle of transformative spiritual thought that reshaped the world. Pilgrimage routes connected sacred sites across the land. Pilgrimage has been central to Indian spirituality for thousands of years. Ancient routes connected rivers, temples, mountains, and sacred cities, weaving the subcontinent into a spiritual map. Devotees walked for weeks or months to reach holy sites such as Varanasi, Bodh Gaya, or Rameswaram. Along these routes, rest houses, wells, and shrines offered hospitality to travelers. Pilgrimage was more than personal devotion, it fostered cultural exchange, as people of different regions and languages met on the road, sharing stories, songs, and traditions. Festivals often coincided with pilgrimages, creating massive gatherings that reinforced unity across India. Even today, millions follow these ancient paths, echoing steps taken thousands of years ago. Pilgrimage routes remind us that spirituality in India was not confined to texts or temples, but lived through journeys, connecting landscapes, communities, and people to the divine in motion. Yoga was not just exercise, but a path to liberation. In ancient India, yoga was not about stretching or fitness. It was a profound system of philosophy and practice designed to unite body, mind, and spirit. Early texts like the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali describe yoga as an eightfold path, including ethical rules, meditation, concentration, and physical postures. The goal was nothing less than liberation from the cycle of suffering and rebirth. Breath control, meditation, and self-discipline trained practitioners to master their minds and achieve states of deep stillness. While physical postures were part of it, They were meant to prepare the body for meditation, not to build muscle or flexibility alone. Over the centuries, yoga evolved into multiple traditions, from devotional practices to ascetic disciplines. Its endurance and global popularity today are astonishing, but at its heart, yoga remains what it was in ancient India, a sacred science of self-realization, guiding seekers toward inner freedom. Indian inscriptions record everyday market transactions. While temples and kings left grand inscriptions, many simpler ones reveal glimpses of daily life in ancient India. Stone and copper plate inscriptions record donations to temples, land grants to farmers, and even transactions in bustling marketplaces. Some list prices for goods, wages for workers, and taxes collected by rulers. These records show an economy alive with activity, traders selling cloth, spices, and jewelry, farmers bringing harvests to town, and artisans producing tools and ornaments. They also reveal fairness and regulation. Contracts ensured protection for merchants, and penalties were imposed for cheating. These humble inscriptions bring ancient India down to earth, showing not just philosophers and kings, but shopkeepers and farmers living their lives. They remind us that behind the grand monuments, a vibrant, organized society thrived, where markets hummed with energy and the business of everyday survival was carefully recorded for posterity. Ancient India had complex legal codes and laws. Law in ancient India was not arbitrary. It was systematized in texts like the Manusmriti, which laid down rules for society, family, property, and justice. While some laws reflected the rigid hierarchies of caste, others reveal a striking concern for fairness, contracts, and social stability. Village assemblies often acted as courts, resolving disputes locally, while kings appointed judges and officials to enforce justice. Punishments ranged from fines to more severe penalties, but emphasis was often placed on restitution and restoring balance. Legal codes also wove morality and spirituality into governance, linking justice with dharma. This made law more than social order. It was part of the cosmic order itself. Though aspects of these codes are controversial today, they show the sophistication of Indian society in organizing legal frameworks that lasted for centuries, influencing later traditions across Asia and beyond. Women held influential roles in certain dynasties. Though patriarchy was strong in ancient India, history records remarkable women who held power and influence. Queens acted as regents, advisors, and even rulers in their own right. Inscriptions speak of women donors who built temples, funded schools, and supported trade. Some women were celebrated scholars, poets, or philosophers, participating in debates alongside men. The Sangam literature of southern India praises warrior queens who led armies into battle. Buddhist texts describe nuns who achieved spiritual liberation and spread teachings. Even in domestic life, women shaped culture through storytelling, rituals, and artistry. While opportunities varied across time and region, these examples remind us that women were not absent from India's grand narrative. They were often at its heart, guiding dynasties, inspiring devotion, and leaving legacies still remembered today. Their presence complicates and enriches our understanding of ancient Indian society. Ancient Indian texts describe advanced agricultural methods. Agriculture was the backbone of ancient India, and texts reveal a surprisingly advanced understanding of farming. Manuals like the Krishi Parashara described plowing techniques, crop rotation, irrigation, and soil management. Farmers grew rice, wheat, barley, cotton, and sugarcane, adapting to diverse climates across the subcontinent. They timed planting and harvest with lunar and solar calendars, ensuring alignment with seasonal rhythms. In some regions, terraced fields were carved into hillsides, while in others, canals and reservoirs captured monsoon rains for irrigation. These techniques supported dense urban populations, from the Indus Valley to the Gupta Empire. Agriculture wasn't just labor, it was integrated with ritual, with festivals marking sowing and harvest seasons. The sophistication of ancient Indian farming shows how deeply people understood their environment, transforming it with respect and ingenuity. It ensured abundance that sustained cities, temples, and trade networks for millennia. Water management systems supported huge populations. In a land dependent on monsoon rains, ancient India mastered water management with astonishing ingenuity. Reservoirs, canals, stepwells, and tanks captured and stored seasonal rainfall, ensuring water supply year-round. Cities like Dolavira in the Indus Valley had massive water storage systems with interconnected reservoirs, while later kingdoms built grand tanks like the Pushkar Lake and Kalanai Dam, some of which are still in use. Today, these systems allowed agriculture to flourish even in dry regions, supporting large populations and vibrant trade. Water management was also tied to religion. Many tanks were attached to temples, symbolizing purity and life. The combination of engineering, community effort, and spiritual meaning made water systems both practical and sacred. Their survival through centuries shows just how effective they were. Ancient India's ability to harness water transformed landscapes into thriving civilizations long before modern technology arrived. Indian craftsmen produced glass, beads, and fine pottery. The artistry of ancient Indian craftsmen extended far beyond stone temples and sculptures. Excavations reveal workshops where artisans made colorful glass, delicately carved beads, and beautifully shaped pottery. Beads made of carnelian, faience, and semi-precious stones were especially prized, drilled with precision so fine that modern tools struggle to replicate it. Pottery ranged from simple household wares to painted vessels with intricate geometric designs. Glassmakers produced bangles and ornaments in bright colors, traded far beyond India's borders. These crafts were not merely luxuries, they were essential to everyday life, reflecting both utility and beauty. The skill required was immense, passed down through generations of artisans. The survival of these objects, thousands of years later, shows not only the durability of the materials, but the enduring creativity of Indian hands. Each bead or pot is a tiny masterpiece, carrying echoes of the workshops and markets of long-lost cities. Education was valued and often passed through gurukulas. Education in ancient India was not confined to elites. It was a valued part of society, often passed down through the gurukula system. In this tradition, students lived with their teacher or guru, studying not only texts but also discipline, ethics, and life skills. Subjects included the Vedas, philosophy, grammar, astronomy, medicine, and martial arts. Learning was holistic, designed to shape character as much as intellect. Famous centers like Takshashila and Nalanda attracted students from across Asia, while smaller gurukulas operated in villages and towns. Education was often oral, with knowledge memorized and transmitted through recitation. What's striking is the emphasis on teacher-student bonds, seen as sacred relationships of trust and guidance. Ancient India's devotion to education shows a society where knowledge was revered, and learning was seen as a lifelong pursuit connected to both personal growth and cosmic truth. Ancient Indian cities had organized marketplaces. The bustling life of ancient Indian cities can be felt most vividly in their marketplaces. Excavations revealed designated areas where merchants sold food, textiles, jewelry, spices, and tools. Inscriptions describe taxes collected on goods, regulated weights and measures, and even licenses for certain trades. Markets were lively hubs where farmers, artisans and traders mingled, negotiating prices and exchanging gossip. They weren't just economic spaces, they were social centers where communities connected. In larger cities, markets were divided into sections, with certain streets reserved for specific trades, like cloth sellers or metalworkers. The orderliness of these markets reveals careful urban planning, while their diversity shows the vibrancy of Indian commerce. To imagine walking through one is to hear the clatter of pots, the scent of spices, and the call of merchants advertising wares. Ancient marketplaces were the heartbeat of urban life, pulsing with color and energy. Knowledge was preserved through oral tradition for centuries. One of the most remarkable achievements of ancient India was its oral tradition, which preserved vast amounts of knowledge without writing for centuries. The Vedas, composed over 3,000 years ago, were transmitted word for word across generations through precise memorization techniques. Students recited texts in complex patterns, ensuring accuracy through redundancy. This oral culture extended beyond religion. Stories, laws, medicine, and science were also carried in memory and performance. The discipline required was extraordinary. Reciters could spend years perfecting pronunciation and rhythm. Oral tradition allowed ideas to spread even in societies where writing was rare, keeping culture alive and vibrant. When these texts were eventually written down much later, they were remarkably consistent, proving the effectiveness of oral preservation. This feat reveals a culture where the human mind itself was the library, and memory was a sacred vessel for humanity's wisdom. The legacy of ancient India continues to shape the world today. From mathematics and medicine to philosophy, art, and spirituality, the legacy of ancient India is woven deeply into the fabric of our modern world. The concept of zero and the decimal system underpins science and technology. Yoga and meditation are practiced globally as paths to wellness and self-discovery. Indian epics inspire literature and film across cultures. Ancient trade shaped global tastes through spices, cotton, pearls, and steel. Philosophical ideas like karma and dharma resonate worldwide, influencing not only religion but also ethics and daily life. What is most extraordinary is the continuity. Traditions begun thousands of years ago are still practiced today, from Vedic chants to temple rituals to festivals. Ancient India was not just a civilization of its time, it was a civilization for all time, its wisdom and creativity echoing endlessly. To study it is to realize how deeply it continues to shape who we are. As we come to the end of our gentle journey through the world of ancient India, it's worth pausing to let the echoes settle. We've walked through cities planned with such care that their drains and wells still amaze modern engineers. We've sat among poets, philosophers, and storytellers who spun wisdom into verse and wove the mysteries of the cosmos into chants and fables. We've glimpsed the vast sweep of empires, the devotion of pilgrims, and the quiet artistry of beads, pottery, and carved stone. Perhaps most remarkable is how much of this legacy still lives with us. The games once played in courtyards, the music carried by veena and flute, the philosophies of dharma and karma, the practices of yoga and meditation. These are not lost relics, but living gifts passed forward across centuries. Ancient India was not simply a chapter in the human story. It was a foundation, one that still supports how we think, create, and seek meaning today. As you rest now, you might picture the soft glow of a lamp flickering in an ancient home, its light dancing across walls painted with stories. Or the sound of a distant river flowing steadily as it has for millennia, nourishing fields and guiding pilgrims. These images, gentle and enduring, remind us that civilizations rise and fall, but the essence of their wisdom lingers, like ripples moving outward on a vast and timeless sea. If you've enjoyed this journey, I invite you to support the Sleepy History channel by subscribing or leaving a kind thought in the comments. It helps more curious dreamers find their way here, one sleepy soul at a time. For now, though, there is nothing more to do. Allow the stories of ancient India to drift softly through your thoughts, like threads in a tapestry weaving you into rest. Let your breathing slow, your body grow heavy, and your mind wander gently into sleep. And when you wake, the past will still be waiting, patient, eternal, ready to share its wonders once again. Good night.